Today, I'm going to show you 3 ways to bulletproof your hip flexors. And in so doing, we should learn a lot about the hip flexors. Let me show you those 3 different ways. This is the rotation. That's going to be the last one. Don't look at that. The first one we have is neutral to flexion, okay? The second one is going to be neutral through extension of the hip flexors. And the last one, the first one, is going to be flexion through rotation. So flexion, extension, flexion through rotation. The hip flexors are viable in all of these ranges of motion. So if you truly want to bulletproof your hips, these are the 3 ways, these are the 3 planes we need to address. Before we get into all of that, welcome to the Anatomy of Therapy. I'm Dr. John Cybulski, where we break down movement to help you reach your goals. And we'll talk a little bit about what the hip flexor does for us. It protects the back, it protects the knees. As we go through this, we may learn a little bit more about the benefits of bulletproofing your hip flexors, why you need it. First and foremost, second and foremost, I guess we're at now, I'm going to assume that your hip flexors are stretched, that you have already kind of stretched your hip flexors to some degree. You don't need to have full stretch through your hip flexors to start these exercises. In fact, sometimes you can start these exercises and get the flexibility by adding some strength to your hip flexors. But I'm going to assume you've got a decent, an entry level of hip flexibility or hip flexor flexibility before we get into this. So let's go to the first one. This is probably one of the coolest ones. This is knees over toes guy, obviously. Ben Patrick. He has got monkey feet on. I'll put a link below or not. I don't know. Monkey feet are everywhere. He's got a weight on his foot, and he is obviously flexing his hip up. Now, you'll notice from the very beginning, from jump, he's letting it go down, and he's pulling it back up. So what he's trying to say is to keep this back leg straight, put the weight on your leg, and flex upwards. This is like a really old school PT exercise. I've given it to my patients before, not with these monkey feet or anything. We'll put a band. Sometimes if you just strap a band around the bottom of their foot and they have to pull the band up, we call it marches. Leg flexion is an important thing that we do in rehab all the time. Ben is bringing back, knees over toes guy is bringing back the weight on the foot, and I like it. Some people are like, let's leave the 80s and 90s PT, physical therapists in the past. There's still some good stuff. The slant board is one of them. Monkey feet is another one. It's a great contraption because now you can add more weight. Typically, we just do those yellow TheraBands, and they're just getting a bunch of reps of flexion. So you're pulling yourself into that flex position. You're trying to stay upright. You can see that he's balancing back here. Don't let your body go forward. He's pulling the leg up and then slowly letting it down. And he's talking, so it's a little bit jittery, but you get the idea. Pull it up. The knees over toes guy always tries to add in a force and a load component at the end. So in the beginning, you won't start with that's probably a 20, 25 maybe pound weight. You won't start there, obviously. You'll start with a lower weight and you'll go slower. But as you progress in bulletproofing anything, you're going to work on increasing your force and load. That is how things grow with muscle. That's just exercise, force and load. So he's increasing the load on the foot instead of the yellow bands. He's got the monkey feet with a 20 pound, maybe 25 pound weight. I would believe it's a 30 if it's knees over toes guy. And then he's adding a little bit of extra force. So you see him kind of go quickly there towards the end. That is what we want to work to. Start these easy. Sets and reps with these are pretty simple. You're gonna do about 10, 12, and it depends on the weight. If you notice that you're not really stressed, you need to go to where you feel that you are stressed and then leave 2 or 3 in the bank. This isn't trying to kill it at the end. Leave 2 or 3 in the bank. It's safe. So that may be 18 for some of you. That may be 5 for some of you. You have to figure out the weight. Once you figure out the weight, you'll get more natural. Okay, so this is neutral to flexion. Let's go from neutral to extension. So the hip flexor, let's outline this. The hip flexor goes from like the lumbar spine, about halfway through. So cutting off from here and cutting off from there, it basically comes down this way, okay? Internally, right? So that is where it is. In the flexion one, we are shortening the distance from here and about halfway through there. So he is shortening that as much as possible, right? In this second one, say the hip flexor goes about a third of the way up the femur, and then it connects basically to the bottom of the diaphragm. This one is trying to lengthen this position, lengthen the hip flexor as much as possible. So hip flexor to flexion, hip flexor through extension. Don't forget each range of motion. You're a three-dimensional being. You're not a cartoon. I've gone over reverse Nordics before. We have a podcast on it, and we just did another video on this one. So I'll link to that video. Go watch that. I talk about it in great detail. Basically, the idea is you're getting the hip flexor from neutral to extension in this one, and sets and reps, all that stuff is in the other video. We just need to make sure that we cover the extension portion of the hip flexor. The only reason that this one is a little bit different too is that it will hit both hip flexors, which is typically not the best way to go. Doing things bilaterally, it kind of halvens the results, but it also makes it twice as hard. So anyways, work on reverse Nordics. Look at our podcast and or the other video on reverse Nordics for a better breakdown than this. Just know we're covering the neutral to extension range with this. Last one. This is going to be a figure for flow. Some people call it the shin box, but you can see we are in a lot of hip flexion here, which means that the hip flexors are on notice, right? They are primary in this hip flex state, right? Now, the thing is, we're not moving them through flexion. We're not moving them through extension. We will at the very end, but we're biasing this internal rotation and external rotation. So then once we get there, now we're going to work on hip flexion. So this one is going to be, this leg is internally rotated. This leg is externally rotated. So you are going to get hip flexion and internal rotation on this side. And on the back leg, you're going to get hip extension and external rotation or abduction of the leg, right? So we're getting it in each direction. With this exercise, the weight is to help you keep yourself upright. You're just going to shin box over and then extend those hips and really finish the turn through there. So you'll see at the very end, he's really trying to get that turn over there, which is going to fully extend this side, which will make sense. But then he's going to go back. Once you've extended the muscle all the way, you want to go back and flex it all the way so that you can go in and out of it. You don't want to just have extension. You don't want to just have flexion. You don't want just internal rotation. You don't just want external rotation. You want the ability to go through all of these cycles of movement. If you can kind of go through these big things, big extension, internal rotation, and hip extension, you'll get some glute. You might feel your glutes here quite a bit. Hopefully you feel your glutes here. If you start to feel the glutes working, they work as antagonists for the hip flexor. So now that the hip flexor is lengthened, we are getting the glutes to strengthen it in that position. And we go back the other way. We're working, again, we're going to go external rotation. This one's now going internal rotation while in flexion. So this is getting the hip flexor in flexion through internal and external rotation, and then lift up all the way. The weight can stay, so you can see he keeps it close to his body or far away. He holds it far away in the middle here. Otherwise, he falls backward. So kind of, it's a lightweight. That's maybe a 15 pound weight. That's to help your torso stay upright. So it's a nice cheat to keep your upper body in the right position because we're targeting the hip flexors at the hips. With these, you want to do it repetitiously. So you'll feel a difference left through right. You guys leave great comments. Smash the like button if you found this valuable. You guys leave great comments about dosage all the time, reps, sets. What sort of sets and reps do you do with this one? This is going to be a dozen. You need to do it until it feels even on either side. Balance it out. Make it feel the same on the left as the same on the right. Again, I've said this before, but quality over quantity. Make it look good, make it look smooth, and your body will respond. So if you train dirty, your muscles get a little dirty. But if you train smooth and move thoroughly, goodness, we got to wind this one down. You need about 10 to 15 reps with this one. That's all I'll say. I'm losing it, y'all. This is the 3 ways to bulletproof: flexion to flex, neutral to flexion, neutral to extension, and through rotation. Bulletproof your hips. Those 3 ways. Like the thing, hit the thing. We got a podcast. I'm done. Peace, y'all. Oh, one last thing. We got a podcast on iTunes. And if you like this, you should subscribe to our podcast because we talk about cool stuff like this all the time. That's great. We've got 50 plus episodes, all sorts of stuff. What do you want to hear about? What videos do you want to see? Comment below, hashtag suggestion, or don't. I'll read them all. There's usually like 4 or 5 of them. What do you guys want to see? What do you want to do? Let's make some videos, yeah? Have a great day.